The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. The sort of quiet that doesn't merely fill a room but squeezes the air out of it. Everyone within understood something dynamite was about to happen. But no one believed the sort of wound that would be opened up that day. At the center of it all stood Kody Brown, the man who had founded his family on love, togetherness, and faith, now standing accused of doing something that no father would ever want to be accused of. Favoritism, betrayal, abandonment. The creaking wooden benches as members of the family uncomfortably shifted. Christine sat holding on to her daughter Truely's hand, her expression set with anger and grief. Janelle, her eyes blazing with fire, had Savannah beside her, her teenage daughter holding back tears as she fought to be brave. Robyn across the room shifted her position, her children hidden away from the tension, while Kody walked by. No look, no smile, not even a nod. Kody Brown walked into that courtroom and disregarded his daughters, Savannah and Truely, as if they weren't even present. That one moment, that disturbing silence, was the spark that ignited a storm. This wasn't merely about one hearing. This wasn't merely about legal documents, custody orders, and disputes over property. This was the culmination of years of shattered promises and hurt feelings. Fans had seen sister wives disintegrate on television for years. What started as a tale of togetherness, a husband juggling love and respect between four wives, gradually became a public examination of favoritism. The newest wife, Robyn, appeared to garner not only Kody's love, but his entire allegiance, leaving Meri, Janelle, and Christine on the outside. But the favoritism didn't end there. It ran all the way down to the kids. Savannah had grown up observing less and less of her father. Her milestones, birthdays, school successes, teenage angst hardly ever involved him. Truely, as well, had experienced the pain of distance, witnessing her father fawn over Robyn's kids while hardly noticing her own unobtrusive needs. By the time this court case blew up, the children's silent suffering had escalated into irrefutable evidence. Kody's love was not equal. And when he dismissed them in that courtroom, it was no longer rumor. It was fact. The judge, a wise older man with a piercing eye, saw it right away. The cameras documented it, the gallery murmured about it. Christine's lawyer didn't hesitate to expose it. "Your Honor," began the attorney, "what we have here is not merely a custody dispute. It is a pattern of neglect. It is a father indulging in open favoritism, not merely behind closed doors, but right here before this court." Janelle leaned forward, her voice shaking but intense. "Savannah has pleaded for her father's attention for years, and today he couldn't even look at her." Those words sliced like a knife. The courtroom went silent. The silence that causes individuals to hold their breath for a moment. Savannah's face contorted, sobs streaming down her cheeks. Truly buried her face on her mother's arm, too young to grasp the full weight, but old enough to experience the pain of rejection. And then the judge did what no one anticipated. He addressed Kody directly. "Mr. Brown," he instructed bluntly, "why do you favor certain of your children over others?" The question everyone had been wondering for decades was finally uttered in the one place Kody could no longer hide. Kody shifted restlessly. His words tumbled out like a man trapped in his own contradictions. He talked of time constraints, of doing his best, of the complexity of plural family life. But the more he talked, the more hollow his words sounded. For when questioned for specifics, what grade Savannah was in, what hobbies Truly enjoyed, when he last spent quality time with them, his responses were glib, evasive, even heedless. But what about Robyn's children? His demeanor shifted. He was talking clearly now, with passion, with an intimate knowledge of their lives, right down to the minute details. Their battles, their triumphs, their wants. He knew everything, and there it was, his bias exposed for the whole courtroom to witness. Christine shook her head in fury, whispering under her breath, "This is exactly what I've been saying for years." Janelle's eyes glistened with heartbreak, not for herself but for her daughter, who now had to hear her father publicly confirm what she had always feared, that she simply didn't matter to him as much as the others. Savannah wept softly, her shoulders shuddering. Truly stood fixedly on the floor, wishing she might just disappear. It wasn't merely hurtful. It was shattering. By the time the session concluded, the judge hadn't made a decision. But he didn't have to. The true verdict had already been given in the eyes of everyone in the courtroom. Kody Brown had demonstrated to his children where they fit in his heart. Outside, Christine hugged Truly, promising love in whispers. Janelle held Savannah tightly, telling her she would never be left behind. Cameras recorded the moment, a mother's love taking the place of the father's love that had fallen short. But Kody, he exited with Robyn by his side, eyes straight ahead, never a glance backward at the daughters whose hearts were shattering behind him. That photo went viral in hours. Fans inundated social media with indignation. #justice for Savannah #stand. With Truly, those hashtags were on trend for days. Citizens all over the globe were shocked, outraged, and saddened together. It wasn't reality TV anymore. It was life, with real kids in the middle of it all. And so the agonizing courtroom scene was transformed beyond a judicial struggle. It became a moment that would define the Brown family legacy. A moment that made everyone, wives, kids, fans, even the judge, face reality. Kody Brown, the man who had once preached equality and oneness, had let his heart out in silence. Not in words, but in what he didn't do. He didn't even glance at Savannah. He didn't even nod at Truly. He didn't defend them, console them, or even attempt. And perhaps that's why this scene aches so terribly. Because in that silence, in that lack, in that cruel instant of favoritism at last revealed, a family was fractured in a way that no ruling, no settlement, and no apology could ever restore. The question that haunts now is simple, but unquiet. Can an openly dismissive father ever win back his children? Or was this courtroom silence the last nail in the coffin of the Brown family's shattered bond? The courtroom was not only silent, it was stifling. The type of silence that weighs on your chest, so that every gasp is a labor. It wasn't the typical quiet of legal proceedings. It was a silence that came from expectation, fear, and the inescapable fact that something hurt was about to ensue. The case had been garnering attention, not just because it concerned the Brown family, but due to the fact that this was no run-of-the-mill custody battle. This was sister-wives drama, brought into the harsh glare of the legal arena. The public had watched their saga unfold on television for more than a decade, and here it was happening in real life, unedited and raw, and agony-filled. The wooden benches groaned as spectators shifted in their seats. Lawyers conferenced with their clients. The bailiff stood stiffly by the door. In the front, the judge adjusted his glasses and shuffled through the case files, his face stern but tired. Everyone was ready for another long, drawn-out hearing. No one could have been ready for what happened the second Kody Brown walked into the room. The doors swung open, and Kody entered, his hair back, his jaw clenched. His footsteps rang out against the gleaming wooden floor, each step like a drumbeat marking down to battle. He was dressed in his normal assured look, the face of a man accustomed to dictating the terms, accustomed to speaking above the din, accustomed to demanding attention. But as his eyes scanned the room, something was lacking. He did not look in the direction of the benches on which his children were seated. He did not even look in their direction. Savannah sat next to her mother, Janelle, her back rigid, her hands balled into fists so hard her knuckles were pale. She attempted to hold her chin aloft, but her eyes gave her away. They scanned the space in the direction of her father, as if searching, pleading for recognition. A single glance, a single smile, just the indication that she wasn't invisible. Truly sat next to Christine, her smaller hand nestled inside her mother's protective hold. Her face was gentle with the innocence of youth, but her eyes wore the burden of bewilderment. She wore her neat clothes, her hair brushed with care, maybe hoping that her father would notice, actually notice, and be proud. Kody's eyes stayed straight ahead, his stride steady, his lips pinched into a thin line. He walked directly past them, as if Savannah and Truly were strangers in the space. Not daughters, not blood, not pieces of his heart. And in that moment, everything changed. The ensuing silence was stifling. It wasn't that Kody ignored them. It was the manner in which the room just seemed to suck up that rejection, amplify it, and send it back onto the girls. Savannah blinked fast, her throat constricting as she bit back tears. She had braced herself for letdown. After all, it wasn't the first time her father had disappointed her. But to see it so unabashedly, with strangers, cameras, and the law there to witness it, it was a fresh type of sorrow. Truly's soft voice spoke something to Christine, who leaned her head in close, her ear listening. Christine nodded, tightening her hold on her daughter's hand, her jaw set in anger. She didn't have to hear the words exactly. She knew what Truly was saying. Why doesn't Daddy look at me? The audience sensed it, the attorneys sensed it, even the judge hesitated, his eyes narrowing faintly, as though he too had sensed the chill of Kody's actions. It wasn't what Kody did. It was what he wouldn't do. It wasn't what he said. It was what he wouldn't say. And that was louder than any later testimony. Christine's face was a tempest barely held back. She had battled for years to keep her children safe from this same truth. The truth that their father valued others above them. And now here it was. Inescapable. Revealed under courtroom lighting. Janelle, however, had an expression that was half heartbreak and half rage. She had excused Kody before, attempted to justify his absence, attempted to convince herself that he was only stretched too thin. But today, as she watched her daughter's heart break, those excuses dissolved. Her eyes were brimming with tears, but her lips were shaking with anger. The two women shared a look over the bench, a nod of understanding. This was no longer merely about property, or custody papers or forms. This was about their children's emotional survival. Whispers swept like fire through the courtroom's back pews. Reporters fidgeted, pens moving more rapidly. Fans who had known the Browns from the start now leaned forward, eyes wide, hardly believing what they had witnessed. Did he just walk by them? Someone whispered. He didn't even glance at them. Someone else whispered. It was more than gossip. It was shock. Fans had speculated for years regarding favoritism, regarding Kody prioritizing Robyn's family over the rest of them. And here in the moment was irrefutable evidence. And it was nastier than anyone could have dreamed. For Savannah, that moment sliced deeper than words could say. Her adolescence had already been characterized by isolation, a father missing at moments where he should have been there. Birthdays went by with little notice. School functions went unnoticed. Now this courtroom silence was not just one more disappointment. It was verification of all those dismal assumptions she had carried within her heart. She wasn't worthy enough. Not to him. For truly, the hurt was quieter, more insidious, but no less destructive. She was young enough to still need her father's approval, still optimistic enough to anticipate it. Catching his gaze slide past her was like having the rug ripped out from beneath her. There was confusion churning inside her chest. What was she doing wrong? Why didn't Daddy notice her? Christine stooped, mouthing words of comfort. Janelle covered Savannah's shoulder with a shielding hand, but both of them understood. However much love they bestowed, the lack of a father's recognition creates a hurt that cannot be completely mended by a mother. The judge relaxed a little in his seat, his gaze moving from Kody to the children and back. Judges observe many things during their careers: anger, dishonesty, betrayal. But this type of reserved rejection bore a special weight. He said nothing yet, but his face grew darker. Body language is evidence in a courtroom. Silence is evidence. And Kody had already made the court a strong statement, without saying anything. The silence stretched like a shadow across the whole room, because everyone knew. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a choice. Kody had decided not to recognize Savannah. He had decided not to look Truly in the eye. And by doing so he let everyone know what many had muttered but few had been brave enough to actually say out loud. His love was unequal. His children were not of equal standing in his heart. It was favoritism, laid bare in real time. Before the judge, before the court, before the world. That one thing, entering the courtroom and paying no mind to two of his daughters, was more than a personal blunder. It was the basis upon which the entire case would be built. Christine and Janelle's lawyers would subsequently latch onto it. The judge would keep going back to it. And fans would never let it be forgotten. Because sometimes the loudest truths are heard not in arguments or outbursts, but in silence. And on that day, Kody Brown's silence to Savannah and Truly spoke volumes. It was the stunned courtroom silence that dispelled illusions, uncovered favoritism, and heartbroke two little girls before the world's eyes. The quiet of that courtroom moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the echo of the years of cracks in the Brown family. To the unsuspecting watcher, it might have appeared that Kody's chill towards Savannah and Truely occurred in one agonizing moment. But to those who had experienced it, and to viewers who had watched their lives play out on television, this moment was merely the tip of a long and messy iceberg. A history where favoritism wasn't just whispered about, it was felt, a history where the balance of love, time, and attention began to tilt long ago. When Sister Wives premiered, the Brown family seemed to be under one dream, one large family united through faith and choice. The self-assured patriarch, Kody, spoke at length of equality among his wives. Christine, Janelle, and Meri, the first three, walked with the subdued pride of women who felt they were part of something remarkable. Initially, she was received with open arms. The family discussed how she brought joy, fresh energy, and additional love into the home. But as time went by, fans started to pick up on what the wives themselves were unable to. Kody's energy, his affection, his time, and even his money seemed to be directed increasingly towards Robyn and her kids. What began as sideways glances, repeated visits, and preferential treatment gradually developed into a chasm so great that no amount of editing on reality TV could mask it. Years went by, and Janelle attempted to remain impartial, concentrating on raising her children, including her daughter Savannah. Christine, always the more vocal of the two, grappled with the perpetual disparity, particularly when relating to her youngest Truely. Meri retreated, emotionally alone in her own marriage. But Kody's partiality to Robyn and her children was impossible to ignore. All the viewers could see it. All the wives could sense it. And the kids, maybe the purest of all, sponged it up like wet sponges. Dinners with the family became strained. Vacations turned into battlegrounds of subtle exclusion. When illness hit, Kody hurried to Robyn's bedside, but remained aloof when Christine or Janelle's children were ill. It wasn't that Savannah and Truely were not loved by their mothers. Far from it. Janelle and Christine drenched their children with love. But the lack of their father's attention etched unseeable wounds. A daughter doesn't merely want to be loved. She needs to be chosen. And over again, they weren't. For Savannah, the gap became painfully evident in her adolescence. She had been around the cameras, around the narrative of her family unfolding publicly. But what the cameras were not always able to catch was the private pain of being ignored. Birthdays passed by with making it up later, promises from her dad. School activities had her mother loudly cheering her on from the stands, while her father never showed up. Holidays became a complicated shell game, with her always ending up with less than everyone else. Behind closed doors, Savannah would occasionally cry, telling Janelle, "Why doesn't Dad ever show up for me?" Janelle, caught between keeping her daughter safe and standing by her husband, would comfort her as best she could. But every excuse sounded more untrue with the passing of years. By the time Savannah sat in that courtroom, as she watched her father walk by her without even a glance, she already knew what it was. That silence wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. It was different for Truely though. Younger than Savannah, she still had the innocence of a child who wished to believe the best. She had questions Christine had trouble answering. "Daddy is always at Robyn's. Why doesn't he come here?" Christine, defending to a fault, attempted to protect her daughter from the reality. But inside, she knew Truely sensed it. There were times when Truely would sit by the window, waiting for her father's car. There were times when she drew for him and hid them away, hoping he might come by. But the visits were infrequent, and the disappointment became weighed down. In court, when Kody passed by her without a nod, the questions came flooding back in her eyes. "Why doesn't Daddy look at me?" Something no child should ever have to wonder about. For Christine, the favoritism had been a sore spot in her marriage for years. She had spoken up about it, blaming Kody for ignoring her children in favor of Robyn's. Her ultimate choice to leave the plural marriage wasn't selfish. It was about keeping Truely from growing up thinking she was second best. For Janelle, the resentment smoldered more internally. She had been responsible, always managing the finances of the family, always keeping everything intact. But seeing the hurt of Savannah undid her in ways she couldn't conceal. Janelle understood what the world perceived, Kody's absence, and she knew what was left in its wake. By the time they arrived in court, both women had had enough. They weren't simply mothers battling over custody arrangements. They were mothers battling over their daughter's dignity. And then there was Robyn. Many fans today debate whether or not Robyn promoted Kody's favoritism or merely became the beneficiary of it. But whatever her role was, the perception was inescapable. Robyn and her children were being privileged. They saw Kody's attention, his emotional presence, and his protection. The dichotomy was extreme. And for Savannah and Truely, the favoritism wasn't sensed. It was lived. When Kody testified in court, being detailed about Robyn's children, but faltering when questioned about his daughters with Janelle and Christine, the favoritism shifted from suspicion to proof. Fans of the show had long debated this divide. But the courtroom moment was the final piece of the puzzle. Social media lit up with outrage. Viewers replayed the footage, pointing out the way Savannah's eyes followed her father, the way Truely looked down at the floor. Some said, "This is the saddest thing I've ever seen on this show." Others wrote, "Kody doesn't even try to hide it anymore." The favoritism was no longer a secret crack. It was a deep gap that consumed the family. Judges have been trained to seek patterns, neglect, favoritism, emotional damage. And although no formal decision had yet been rendered, the pattern emerged in the court's eyes. This wasn't simply a father strained by too many kids. This was a father making decisions, favoring some while abandoning others. The silence of the courtroom in Session 1 had established the groundwork. But the background established in Session 2 demonstrated that this was not a singular instant. It was decades in the making. When Christine's lawyer completed the recitation of the years of neglect, the courtroom had changed. This wasn't simply a matter of money. This wasn't simply a matter of real estate. This was about the children who had been carrying the scars of favoritism for years. And with Savannah and Truely quietly in the back, the whole room felt it. The past had finally caught up with Kody. The years of separation had turned into evidence. And the question lingered in the air like smoke. What kind of father picks some children over others? And what kind of man confesses it in silence? The silence that had shrouded the courtroom following Kody's icy entrance was finally dispelled when the judge brought the case into session. Papers rustled, lawyers rose, and the Brown family shifted restlessly on their benches. But in the formality, the emotional tempest was only just getting underway. Savannah and Truely sat silently in the back. Their tiny presences overshadows all else in the room. They didn't need to say anything. Their grief was etched across their faces. The way they refused to look at their father. The way they hung on to their mothers for support. And then, with the whole gallery looking on, Christine's lawyer rose to his feet and opened what would turn out to be one of the most tearful courtroom battles the family had ever faced. "Your Honor," the attorney began, his voice measured but firm, "this case is not simply about property or finances. It is about children who have been neglected. Children who have been forced to watch their father openly prioritize one part of his family over another. And what happened in this very courtroom today is the clearest evidence of that favoritism." The lawyer waved his hand gently towards Savannah and Truely. Two of Kody Brown's daughters, Savannah a teenager and Truely still just a little girl, sat here today, waiting for their father to acknowledge them. Waiting for a look, a smile, some indication that they existed for him. But what did Mr. Brown do when he came into this courtroom? He ignored them. He went right past his daughters, like they didn't exist. Christine tightened her grip on Truely's hand. Janelle closed her eyes briefly, taking deep breaths as Savannah wiped away tears. The judge looked from the lawyer to Kody. His face was inscrutable, but the force of his gaze was unmistakable. Judges are schooled in detecting patterns of neglect, of presence, of favoritism, and Kody's conduct already had set off warning bells. "Mr. Brown," the judge replied calmly, "you've heard the statement. Do you have an explanation?" Kody fidgeted in his seat. He seemed out of place, his typical bravado dwindling. For once, the man who had monopolized family discussions on national TV appeared speechless. Janelle jumped up from her seat before Kody could answer, her voice shaking but firm. Your Honor, I need to say something. My daughter, Janelle whispered, her voice breaking as she nodded towards Savannah, has pleaded for years for the attention of her father. She's pleaded for him to care, to show up, to just be there. And today, in this courtroom, she sat waiting again. And he passed right by her. Her words dangled in the air like smoke. The gallery fell silent once more. Savannah dropped her head, her tears falling freely now, as Janelle's hands shook to keep hers back. It's not about today, Janelle went on, her voice building up. It's about years and years of being ignored. Years of being shown, in practice if not in words, that she doesn't count as much as the others. And now everyone can see it. Christine rose next, her face set with determination. Your Honor, my daughter truly may be young, but even she knows. She knows her father chooses favorites. She knows he doesn't show up for her the way he does for others. She's asked me why. She's asked me what she did wrong. And I've had no answer to give her. Because the truth is, it's not her fault. It's his choice. Truly huddled in her mother's side, her eyes big and tear-filled, her little body trembling a bit under the burden of the moment. Christine's voice cracked as she went on. And today, when he couldn't even meet her eyes, it was like all those years' worth of questions were answered in the worst possible way. Kody tries to defend himself. Lastly, Kody stood up, his voice constricted with defensiveness. This is being blown out of proportion. I love all of my children. I have attempted to do my best in a very complicated family setup. Do you have any idea what it's like to split your time 4 different households? Between more than a dozen children, I can't be everywhere all the time. I can't always deliver everyone exactly what they require. Christine's lawyer was quick to respond. Mr. Brown, nobody is looking for perfection, but you're looking for an effort. And when you talk about some of your children with passion and detail and you blow off others with something as vague as excuses, that paints a pretty picture. A picture of favoritism. The judge inclined forward. Mr. Brown, can you inform this court, when was the last time you spent quality time with your daughter Savannah, or your daughter Truly? Kody stalled, his mouth worked once then twice. He mumbled something about holidays, and trying to make it work. But the vagueness was damning. The room was charged with tension. The lawyers for the wives shared knowing smiles. The audience wrote madly in their notebooks. Cameras zoomed in on Savannah's tear-stained face, on Truly's shaking hands, on Janelle and Christine's unflinching faces of pain and determination. The story was unfolding before them in real time, and Kody was losing. Not only in the court of law, but in the courtroom of public opinion. Even though Savannah never uttered a word, she was heard louder than any words said. Her sitting position, her fingers writhing in her lap, her eyes scanning her father only to meet no solace there. It was witness enough. Every parent in the room experienced it. Every kid of divorce sitting at home experienced it. It was not merely a battle for custody. It was a daughter shattered in public by the very man who was supposed to safeguard her. Truly still too young to testify, said everything with her silence. She held on to Christine, her big eyes looking up occasionally toward her father, only to slip away again. In that small, innocent gesture was a truth no lawyer could distort. She no longer hoped for her father's attention. She had learned not to hope. And for many viewing, that was the most painful revelation of all. Finally, the judge's voice rang out over the hush. Mr. Brown, this court is charged with deciding what is best for your children. And today, what I have witnessed troubles me greatly. Favoritism is not parenting. Neglect is not parenting. If you love all of your children equally, as you say, then why is it that these 2 little girls appear invisible to you? The question came down like a sledgehammer. Kody swallowed, but no words materialized. The silence was louder than any words he might have spoken. The verdict of emotion in the courtroom. No decree had been handed down, but the verdict of emotion already stood. The wives' witness, the children's tear-filled anguish, the father's vacant alibis. It all created a heartbreaking picture. Christine clutched Truly tightly, speaking soft words of comfort. Janelle wrapped an arm around Savannah, who sagged against her mother, overwhelmed by it all. And Kody, he sat rigid in his chair, his face clenched with rage, frustration, and maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of a dawning awareness of how much he had already lost. Outside the courtroom walls, the tale grew like fire. Fans picked apart each moment, each look, each silence. Hashtags exploded on social media. Hash justice for Savannah. Hash stand with Truly. Hash Kody. Exposed the battle in that courtroom was not simply a court clash. It was a cultural event. A moment where favoritism, long rumored, was brought out for everyone to witness. And in the coming days, this battle would be the beginning of the end for a family already broken. The courtroom had already witnessed its quota of silence, tears, and confrontation. But as the proceedings went on, the focus fell more intensely than ever on Kody himself. The judge's strict cross-examination, the lawyer's tenacious persistence, and the heart-wrenching presence of his children stood Kody on the edge of a cliff. And then the agony of the truth started to reveal itself. Layer by layer, word by word, until the favoritism he had worked so tirelessly to conceal was laid bare before him. Christine's lawyer pushed his glasses up. Papers scattered across the desk in front of him. His voice was cutting but measured, each word carefully selected. "Mr. Brown," he began, "you've said to this court you love all of your children equally, yes?" "Yes," Kody answered, his tone curt. "And yet, when questioned previously regarding recent time spent with your daughters Savannah and Truely, you were unable to give definite responses. Remember that?" Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, annoyance flashing in his eyes. "I said I do my best." "It's complicated," the attorney interrupted smoothly. "Complicated, maybe. But let's see if you can prove that assertion. Can you tell the court what grade level Savannah is at now?" The ensuing silence was deafening. Kody's mouth opened, closed, and then he mumbled, I think she's a junior." Savannah's face turned red with shame. Janelle rolled her eyes, speaking softly to her daughter. The reality was that Savannah wasn't a junior. She had already transitioned into her senior year, an achievement her father hadn't apparently noticed. The contrast with Robyn's children. The lawyer persisted, "And Truly? What are her interests these days? What does she like?" Kody paused again. "She likes, reading, I believe." Christine's face went white with anger. But just as low-key, she spoke quietly into the microphone for the record. "She's been taking dance for months. He hasn't even asked her about it." The lawyer allowed the silence to hang there for effect before proceeding. "Mr. Brown, try another question, okay? Tell us about Ariella's education." The minute Robyn's youngest daughter was mentioned, Kody's whole demeanor shifted. His face relaxed. His voice grew warmer. "Yes, Ariella began her new grade this fall," he replied assertively. "She is doing great, really. She's very outgoing, she likes to sing in class, and she's flourishing at her reading grade." The contrast was savage. Here was a father who could remember the tiniest facts of one child's school life, but not the most elementary facts about his other daughters. The gallery buzzed, the wives looked at each other knowingly, and the judge's face hardened further. Christine could no longer contain herself. Standing up, her voice trembled with a combination of anger and anguish. "Do you see, Your Honor? This is what I've been living with for years. My daughter Truly asks me why her father doesn't care about her life, why he doesn't know the things that matter to her. And now you've heard it here yourself. He doesn't know because he doesn't ask. He doesn't care to ask." Truly's little body shook as she hugged her mother. Her big eyes glanced at her father for a brief moment, only to drop back to the floor, brimming with the pain of rejection. Christine's voice cracked as she continued, "How do you tell a child that she is invisible to her own father?" Janelle's heartbreak. Janelle stood beside her, her voice firm but tinged with anguish. "Your Honor, my daughter Savannah spent the entire teenage years of her life waiting for her father to pay attention to her. What does it do to a girl to never feel like she matters? To sit in the window waiting for a visit that never shows? To plan milestones expecting him to be there, only to be let down time and again?" She indicated toward Savannah, who now dried her tears on the cuff of her sweater. And today in court, he couldn't even recall what grade she's in. That is not complicated. That is not plural marriage logistics. That is neglect. The term neglect lingered in the room. Kody's defense crumbles. Kody, clearly upset, became loud. This is not fair. You're making me out to be some sort of monster. I've been doing my best to split my time. I've had to make difficult decisions. Do you people even realize the pressure I've been under? The judge's gavel came down once to quiet the room. Mr. Brown, this is not about you. This is about your children. Kody's lips compressed into a line, but he had nothing further to say. The courtroom sensed it. The walls of his defense were crumbling. The pain in Savannah's eyes. Savannah slowly raised her head, her red and puffy eyes. She didn't say a word, but the expression on her face was enough to devastate. Her father, mere feet away, hadn't stood up for her, hadn't claimed her, hadn't even recalled where she was in life. Her unspoken tears were the most eloquent testimony of the day. Meanwhile, Truely spoke softly to her mother, a softness that Christine afterwards recounted for the court record. Why does Daddy talk about them more than me? That one question shattered the hearts of all the people listening. Reporters wrote furiously. Spectators wagged their heads in astonishment, and the judge rocked back in his chair, visibly moved by the child's naive suffering. By now, news of the testimony was spreading outside the courtroom. Fans online clipped the exchanges, comparing Kody's vagueness about Savannah and Truely to his passion for Robyn's children. Imagine your dad, not knowing your grade, but knowing everything about someone else's kid, one fan tweeted. This isn't just favoritism, it's cruelty. Another wrote. The hashtags grew louder. #justice for Savannah. #stand with Truely. #Kody exposed. The court of public opinion had already reached its verdict. At last, the judge leaned forward, his voice cold. Mr. Brown, what I am witnessing here is very concerning. A parent cannot speak of love while repeatedly not showing up, not paying attention, and not participating in his children's lives. This court cannot turn a blind eye to what we have learned today. Kody glared at the ground, his expression pinched, but nothing was said. For once, the man who never was silent, never lost an argument, remained silent. The truth could no longer be denied. The favoritism was not conjecture. Evidence, the neglect was not rumor. It was fact. And the victims were not the wives, but the children who had waited patiently for love that never arrived. Christine encircled Truely. Janelle hugged Savannah close. The two women spoke softly to their daughters, assuring them they were loved, they were worthwhile, they were important. But harm had been done. For Savannah, it was etched in every sob. For Truely, it was inscribed in the subtle slouch of her shoulders. For Kody, silence stood as testament to a failed father. As the trial came to its conclusion, the court didn't merely witness evidence. It witnessed heartache. It witnessed favoritism exposed. It witnessed children who had been overlooked, and a father who refused, or could not, acknowledge the truth. And when the judge recessed for the day, the vision that remained wasn't one of papers or property. It was one of two daughters, sitting out in plain sight of their father, but not seen by him. That was the anguish-prone reality uncovered, and no one in that courtroom would ever forget it. The gavel came down, and with a snapping clap of wood on wood, the judge adjourned for the day. But in contrast to other hearings, there was no closure, no relief sigh. Rather, the courtroom was thick with an invisible presence. The presence of children's tears, mother's grief, and a father's silence that spoke volumes more than words ever could. The case was by no means over in the courts, but psychologically a verdict had already been handed down, and the repercussions were instantaneous. Christine stooped low to Truely, holding her daughter close as if she might envelop her in a protection from the agony just revealed. You are loved, sweetheart, she breathed into her child's hair. Don't you ever forget that. Truly's small face buried itself against her mother's chest, but her eyes still darted to her father, questioning, searching, hoping. Janelle, in turn, clasped Savannah to her. Her teenage girl had struggled to maintain control throughout, but now that the session was done, her reserve broke. Sobs streamed down her face as she buried her head on her mother's shoulder. I just don't understand, Savannah whispered, hardly above a whisper. Why doesn't he care? Janelle clutched her closer, her own tears on the verge of falling. He cares, she whispered, although her eyes betrayed her. For deep down inside, she knew her daughter was correct. The father who was supposed to be her guardian had left her in the most public humiliating manner imaginable. Kody's exit as his wives and daughters hugged, Kody remained rigid beside the defense table, collecting his papers. His jaw was clenched, his actions abrupt, as if annoyed at being pinned down, open. Robyn was beside him, her face twisted into worry and belligerence. She straightened her blazer, looked briefly towards the wives, and then turned away hastily. When the bailiff opened the door, Kody walked out without looking back, Robyn keeping close behind. Not once did he look back. Not once did he look at Savannah, or Truely. Not once did he show any softness. That photograph, Kody leaving with Robyn as his other daughters cried into their mother's arms, was the encapsulating moment of the day. It wasn't a scene from a courtroom, it was a metaphor for years of favoritism, abandonment and betrayal. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed, observers exchanged horrified glances. One whispered to another, "He didn't even look at them." Another shook her head. "This is the saddest thing I've ever seen in family court." By the time the families exited the courthouse, the whispers had already become headlines. Social media lit up, spreading the story faster than wildfire. In a matter of hours, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were on fire with indignation. Footage from within the courtroom started circulating, depicting Savannah crying, Truly holding on to her mother, and Kody leaving with Robyn. "Imagine your dad going by you in court like you don't even exist," one user wrote. "This is favoritism at its finest." "Those poor girls," said another. "Not only is this neglect, this is emotional abuse." A comment stated, racking up tens of thousands of likes. Hashtags went into overdrive. #justice for Savannah, #stand with Truly, #Kody exposed, #Brown. Family Truth's Sister Wives fans, who had long been wondering if there was favoritism, now had the smoking gun. No longer was it speculation. It was incontrovertible evidence, put on display for the world to witness. Even before the judge could render his verdict, his expression during testimony was etched into everyone's memory. His intense gaze at Kody, his clear disappointment at the absence of answers, his constant reminder that this court is about the best interests of the children. All of these indicated that Kody's position as a father was on thin ice. The wives knew it. The lawyers knew it. And Kody, even though he didn't show it, had to have felt it too. Christine's private moment outside the courthouse. Christine gathered Truly close and kissed the top of her head. Her face, usually bright with determination, was somber, weary. She spoke quietly to reporters. "All I've ever wanted is for my daughter to know she is loved, valued and seen. Today, she didn't get that from her father, but she'll always get it from me." Truly gazed up at her mother, her little eyes still filled with puzzlement. "But why not from Daddy?" she asked. Christine's throat constricted. She couldn't speak, because the truth was too heartless for a child to hear. Janelle's fierce protection. Janelle had words too. With her arm around Savannah, she turned to face the cameras. Her voice broke, but her words sliced deep. "My daughter has been overlooked long enough. This isn't just a court case. This is her life. And she deserves better than a father who can't even remember what grade she's in." Savannah turned her face away from the cameras, ashamed of the exposure but too broken to argue. Janelle rubbed her back, whispering, "You're strong, you're worthy, and you're not alone." Kody and Robyn's silence. At the same time, Kody and Robyn disappeared into a waiting SUV, declining to comment to reporters. Cameras caught the tension in Kody's jaw, the avoidance of Robyn's eye contact, the stiffness of their departure. The silence was deafening and incriminating. It wasn't so much that they wouldn't speak. It was that their silence seemed to validate what everyone already knew, that they were together as one, and the rest of the family was left crying. Within homes of viewers throughout the country, people cried. Parents clutched their children closer. Children of broken families identified with Savannah and Truly, their own hurt reflected back in those silent tears. This wasn't reality TV anymore. This was reality. The gut verdict was evident. Kody Brown had failed. Not merely as a husband, not merely as a partner, but as a father. As the sun set outside the courthouse, the picture replayed over and over again on news shows and social media. Christine holding Truely, whispering comfort. Janelle holding Savannah as her daughter cried in tears. And Kody, leaving with Robyn, never once looking back. That last photo was the emblem of the whole case. A father leaving his daughters in the most public manner possible. And regardless of what decisions were handed down in the subsequent days, that instant could not be taken back. As the world grappled with the repercussions, one chilling question persisted, reverberating throughout television dens, news broadcasts, and cyber forums. Can this family ever heal? Because favoritism isn't just hurts children in the instant, it hurts them for a lifetime. And when those wounds are inflicted within the glare of a courthouse, cameras flashing and millions watching, they don't soon pass. They linger seared in memory, a testament to the love that could have been but was not. For Savannah and Truely, the future might hold up healing, through the steadfast love of their mothers, but the harm of their father's rejection, the hurt of being invisible in plain view, will never quite disappear. And for Kody Brown, the consequences were not merely legal. They were personal. His silence, his favoritism, his departure with Robyn, all of it was the legacy of a father who picked and chose among his children. That was the coup de grace. The agonizing scene that exposed all, shattered illusions and left a family broken beyond fixing.